Ahmed Yerima is just an ordinary man who was born on the 8th of May 1957 to a police officer and a petty trader. Musa was my father's name. He's late now. And my mother, I spoke with her this morning, so she's still fine. Saadatu is her name. And in Lagos, Ikeja General Hospital, I'm ever so proud of that hospital. From there, I went to Baptist St. Benedict Private School, Abeokuta, where I did my primary school, then Baptist Academy, where I did my secondary school. And I now came to Ife and did my first degree. Went to Royal Holloway College, University of London, for my PhD. I'm a teacher and a theatre administrator. And most of all, I love writing plays and teaching how to write plays. Well, I think I always like to call myself a television boy because I was born in 57 and by 59 the first TV station came. And so I grew up, I was one of those small boys that when he's making so much noise, they just dump me in front of TV. And so that I would keep my mouth shut. And I was always fascinated from the early cartoons of Jack and the Inkwell and all those funny stories. Then Peyton Place was another one that influenced me at the time. And then came Village Headmaster, where I could now recognize Nigerians acting, and Orisun Theatre, which Professor Dakwa Deruba was working. I think by then Wole Soyinka was in prison for some time. And so I used to sit down and follow those stories. And I wanted to tell stories too. But in Form 3, I decided to try, at Baptist Academy, I decided to try a play. I wrote my first play then, Batuma's Daughter, and went to my English teacher, Mrs. Agbola, and I asked her to please read the script, which she did. And then we went out looking for girls because we were a boys' school. But we had girls in Reagan Memorial Grammar School, which was like it was a Baptist school, so we saw it as a girls' school. And at that time, I formed a group called the Georgian and Victorian Drama Group. And instead of Bible Training Union every Thursday, where the girls come to our school, we'll go out to rehearse, and we'll rehearse the play. And we eventually had a performance which came out very well. And that encouraged me and my classmates. And we now decided to do Elechi Amadisi Siburu, which someone sent to us. And we did that. We finished that. We're still in secondary school, still in Form 3. And then when I won the Kennedy essay competition, the essay competition at that time, this was in Form 5, 1975. It was now easier for me to know what I wanted to be. Because I was a talkative in school, everybody thought, and I used to take part in the debating society, they thought I was going to be a lawyer. I also thought I was going to be a lawyer. But I had the great desire to be a storyteller. And I think what happened was fate now had a hand in my life. Because I got very good grades for HSC. But when I got to Unilag had a problem. Unilag had there was no jump then, so Unilag admitted. And I went to UI. And UI insisted that for them to take you for drama, I wanted to go, but immediately they said you did not read English or drama because they didn't have law. I said, okay, I'll do drama. And then they asked me to go, since I didn't have a diploma, I should get someone to identify me. So again, nobody knew me in drama. Professor Adeluba, Mr. Obune, all of them said they didn't know me. So I got angry and decided to go to my last school because I had bought only 3 applications at Ife. So when I got to Ife again, they had over-admitted in law. Law was the hottest kick for everybody then. And what I then did was I just sat outside there and started crying. Because I was told to go back home, and I'd fallen in love with the beautiful university the environment. I just felt this is the definition of a university. And then Dr. Gumbi saw me crying. He had just come back from the States. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I came for admission, but I can't get it." So he said, "Would you read drama?" I said, "Even if it's sweeping, I'll read. I can't go back home. I'm in love with the school." And so he said, "If Soyinka comes back and he likes you, then you will read drama." And Soyinka came back with Oprawoyosi, and I got the role of DJ. And that was how I started reading drama. My vision as an artist was I like being influenced by people, but I like to take their influence as a base and then build on what I feel like becoming. When I met Soyinka, and I wanted to be like Soyinka, but I knew I couldn't be like Soyinka. The limitations were there. And I think Osofisan also came to direct Morontodu, which was a convocation play of ours. And I loved the play, but I loved their works, but I felt there was a limitation because I always had a belief that God made one person, just one single person, and that even when you are twins, you are intrinsically different. And so I decided to build on Ahmed Yerima. And I think one haunting thing was I didn't like the way I was humiliated at Ibadan, which was go and get someone to identify you as a theater person. So I had a personal drive that I'm going to so make it that I will beg me. You understand? And these people say they don't know me. I'm going to show them. And I think that was basically the driving force. So everything I met, everything I was doing was to try and change that opinion, to get them to earn the respect as Ahmed Yerima, and also to be able to establish myself rather than introduce myself and the person says, "Well, you see, I thought I should do something different." So each person, and I was very lucky. I met all the greats, all of them, from Soyinka to Achebe, and so I had an opportunity to be able to, in my own way, appreciate these great people, Adedeji, all of them, Larotimi, and then say, what do I want to do that would be different from them? And instead of using one person as as the person I wanted to beat, I found out that I went into the process of creating myself as the person to beat. So my vision really is to beat Ahmed Yerima. You understand?
You know him well, eh? Yes, I know him well. We were ordained priests the same day. We were sent to work for late Bishop Benito Fratini, a man I had admired from my first day at the seminary. We had other differences, like the issue of the codification of the church rules, the issue of celibacy, abortion, and minute crusades, the acceptance of the Pentecostal churches.
Those are the issues the Archbishop would start with. I once heard him spoke at the last Easter Mass. His sermon was majorly on the stand for the church.
This is why I said you couldn't have found a better inquisitor than Archbishop Tiku, my great friend and brother.
I'm sorry, my lord. If I know...
About what? That the good Lord choose to use you? Let him come. We shall wait for him. We may yet find in him Christ's greatest show of mercy and understanding. Yet my heart stays that
my father was a policeman, and at that time, policemen were sent. It's not like where you centralize now. They were moved up and down. When I was born, he was in Ikeja. And from Ikeja, he moved to Ekpe. From Ekpe, he moved to Abeokuta as DPO. From Abeokuta, he came back to start the Alagbon police station, which is now EFCC. And then he moved to Kaduna as head of Mopul 1. And then from Kaduna, we went to Port Harcourt. From Port Harcourt, he went to Calabar. And he was in Calabar that he retired. You understand? So as police commissioner. So you find that I kept going with him. And I think it was in 1973, in my Form 3, when he got the job to go to Kaduna, that I said, no, I'm not following you. Because he kept affecting my schooling. Because each time I got to, and I don't know what made him believe that any new place we went to had a better school system than the one we're coming from. So he would say, oh yes, he was in them. In fact, I even attended St. Andrew's Primary School, Oyo, for 6 months. He was there for 6 months. I just went there and said, look, this is my son. I don't know your system, but fix him in. You get the point. And they'll say, okay, go and do the exam. And I'll find myself in a class that I left a year before. And so it started to affect me. And I think it was in Form 3 when I fell in love with Baptist Academy. I liked the school. I liked them, And my father called me and said, we are going to Kaduna, and government college, Kaduna is going to give you. I said, I don't want to go. And he said, no, he looked at me like a rebel. I said, look, sir, I'm tired. I'm tired of traveling with you. I need to begin to sit down. But one thing that it did is it had allowed me to build friends in many tongues, and allowed me to speak most of these languages in bits and pieces, at least to get me out of trouble and to get me to buy things that I wanted to eat. And so it was interesting. And whether I liked it or not, I had taken away the sensibilities and the cultural nuances of these people. Because we stayed in some places 2 years, 3 years, and you can't stay in a place 2 years, 3 years and not pick up something. And so by the time I graduated from Ife, I was a rounded person. It was also interesting that after Ife, I was now sent to Enugu for my youth corps. You understand? And then when I arrived there, I said, oh, not again. Where is this? They said, Ogu. I said, oh, okay. It's like home. But what amazed me most, and that's why the multicultural thing is there, is that I found a lot of commonalities within the cultures of the Nigerian people. That we have so many things that are very common. And we may, even the proverbs are the same thing. And what separates most of those proverbs is in the sand of the symbols and motifs. Like in the north, they'll be talking of sand, the desert sand. In the south, you'll be talking of the forest, And then in Plateau, where my wife is from, you're talking of rocks and stones. And in Zaria, I was talking of Hamatan. So those were the things that changed. But when it comes to mannerisms, when it even came to the language and the sensibilities of the language, it was the same. And that's why I was able to adopt that. I felt it would help me, and it has helped me to write more plays when it came to forming my own vision and building who I wanted the Yerima to be. First, I didn't want to have a pseudonym, a pen name, and then the other name. I wanted to be myself. And at the same time, I felt that the only pseudo that I can have is in the title of the play. So when you look at Yemoja, and they tell you the same person wrote Allah, and the same person wrote Queen Amina, it becomes, you begin to appreciate, the traverse of that person and how the person has been able to listen to the society which he's lived. When I took over the national troupe in the year 2000, it was easy for me to blend, because when we arrived in 1991, we met all the works of Ogunde and all the other, and I had formed my own again. Like I said, I take the influences of people and then try and allow that to evolve my own originality. And at that time, only 2 chief executives had run the national troupe. That's Bayo Duneye and Ogunde himself. And interestingly, they were both from Ijebu. One from Ijebu, the other one from Ososa. And so what I did was to say, look, and the troupe has to go beyond that. It has to go beyond the fisherman dance and Bayo Duneye was very strong on plays, a drama, directing. That was his forte. And I had, thanks to Soyinka and the other teachers I had groomed me as an actor, as a director, and as a playwright. And so I could also dance until I retired as a dancer when age set in, and so I found that if I could bring all this together, but I felt it would be a good opportunity for me to learn Nigeria. When I was following my father, we had to go to Nigeria, but now I had enough powers to bring Nigeria to my office. And so what I did was create a system in which each state council for arts and culture would bring artists, their best artists, and they would work with us for 2 years. And from there we will expand their own repertoire of dances, expand our repertoire, and I'll get to know them. And these were the artists who introduced me and to the cultures of their people, to what they did. And I would say this place, Duneye used to make me write those plays too, some of these plays so that we perform them, like Amil Buni, The Trials of Foray, and all those things. And when I wrote them, he would direct them and then make sure I acted in them. So I was at one with the spirit of these cultures that I was writing about. So it became easier for me to be able to represent them or retell them, in other stories. So you would find in the culture, in the Hausa culture, I wrote Atahiru, which Duneye directed. I wrote Muazim's Call. I wrote Minamina. Now I've written Kadenge, which is in the press. And so you will find that for each culture, you will find I've written about 4 plays, or 5, or 10, or 20, or 30. And so that allowed me that virtuosity as an actor, as a playwright, to tell my stories.
We know what share we left behind. The living carcass of a king. Mothers, come closer.
I feel what motivates me to write in history is the sadness I feel about history. When I read history in school, and I found that, and I think that's the difference between the educational system of when I was growing up, of the 50s, 60s, 70s. We were a cramming system. It was a cramming system, which was what five reasons led to the fall of the Mali Empire. It's the same question that led to the Ghana Empire, to the fall of the Ghana Empire, the Borno Empire. Empire was too big for one man to control. The vassal states, the more you cramped them, that was it. But now, the system allows you to ask questions. It says, look, what's going on? Like when I was asked to write the Millennium Play at Atahiru for Nigeria, I said, look, what do I want to achieve from this play? And I said, this country is going to be, I think they were going to be 50 years that time. And I said, look, what are we going to do with this play? And Nigerians are going to read it. My children are going to read it. My great-grandchildren are going to read it. I found that Atahiru's, he just stayed for 6 months. And why would they ask me to write a play on a king who ruled for 6 months? And then I started asking questions. And I think that's the problem. That's the thing about history. History wants you to ask questions. There are so many possibilities, things that happen. And I think in school, so my teacher, Kole Motosho, had taught us faction, the mixture of facts and fiction. And he says, like today, I'm being interviewed in my office. In 20 years' time, 30 years' time, most of us would have dispersed, and and nobody would. If you have to ask Professor Adeoti, you have to go and meet him somewhere in his village and ask him, "Sir, what happened?" You understand? But if it's not possible, you know that an interview took place, and therefore that's a fact. What the content of what took place, they may never be able to get. So if you now want to put it in a play, you have to so put it and think along with the historical happening. And that's what I do with history. I take history and I rejig it. I do not change it that much. But I remember for Atahiru, I had to change it. I had to change it because first, what Atahiru's story did to me was that it showed that Nigeria actually confronted the white people. We didn't just, they always say the problem we have in the history class, they'll say, the problem with Nigeria is that we never fought for our independence. But Atahiru lost 100 soldiers, including himself, in Burmi, in Bochi, where where they fought, they confronted the white man. And so I had to prove that. And I had to change it a little bit. It was very interesting because the late Sultan Machido, who was the Sultan of Sokoto when I wrote the play, and the late President Shehu Shagari, who was the editor from the Sultanate, the Emirate, the Caliphate Council to work with me. They wanted to know what I would do with the end of the play. And the real story was that he knew that they would kill them. They chose, he was a teacher. He was not a soldier. So he had no planning of strategy and all. He went into a valley with his 100 soldiers. And so it was easy with the Maxim gun for the British to just pick him up and pick them up. And he just stayed in the mosque, a small place where he had built to pray, and waited for the bullets to flow. When he saw that there were about 12 people left, he came out with his tesubah and said, La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha. And in fact, the way it's written in the history book is that a bullet massively came, hit his head, came out in his mouth, and he died. But I couldn't do that. What would my children take away from that? So I had two philosophies. One, it is not how long a king rules that matters. It's what he does. And what he did at that time was to give his people a sense of purpose. What he did and was doing to me in that year, 2000, right, turning him into a millennium figure, was to turn Nigeria into one country. First establish that we did confront the white men. And we were conquered, but we confronted them, you know. And then I had to alter. This is where what I do to history, iconoclasm, historicism. I try to take a little bit of the history and then work it to a point that makes sense to my new audience. And that's what I do and that's what I did to Queen Amina. That's what I did to Ame Obuni. Very less of comedy. I think at age 50, I discovered that life wasn't funny anymore. Life wasn't funny anymore. It's fun, but it's not funny. Why I'm saying it's not funny is because I believe that life begins to end at the age of 40, rather than life begins at 40. You know, because at 40, the spare parts, almost like a car. You know, you buy a brand new car, you're flaunting it all over the place. And then, in fact, for me, that's why I always like using a car for 5 years. Because after 5 years, that is when you hear coco. You don't understand it because it's new. You know, it's new pains, new problems coming. And so I begin to ask myself, where do I see life? And that's why I do a mixture of it. There are funny moments in life, there are sad moments. But I think the sadness for me is death. And that's why it also becomes a recurrent theme in my plays. Because it's the stillness, the finality of death that becomes that. And I remember the day I was most happy in this world was the day I would have died 2 years ago, when I was to present a lecture at the University of Ibadan. And Professor Soyinka had given the first lecture. I was going to give the second lecture. I mean, what glory did the student need? And it was the same Ife, Ibadan, that didn't give me admission. And the vice chancellor was seated, all the dean, my classmate Da Silva was seated, everybody was there. It was my day. And in the morning, I did my normal run, jog, and then had a light breakfast, took my drugs, entered the car, fine car with AC, took me straight to Ibadan. Was my day. And then I read the paper, and as I got to, in conclusion, I collapsed. My 600,000 naira laptop was the first to fall. And thank God for Professor Soyinka's brother, who is a medical doctor, Uncle. Uncle was the one who just took a bottle of water and snatched me from the arms of death. And there, at that point, life meant nothing to me. I think the women will forgive me. One, because the story determines the role women will play. The culture determines the role women will play. And in fact, if you look at Ovorame, the trials of Ovorame, no woman says a lie. Because I was working with the palace, and each time I went to see Prince Edward Kenswa, who was like the editor chosen by the palace to work with me, women were not there. And when I went to the palace, the men were there, but they didn't talk. So I first recognized the place of culture, the place of women in culture. And for the playwright's intention is to make the play believable, to make the play accessible, to make those who own the culture accepted. You cannot now make a woman a radical without a reason. Yes, there must be a base for it. And in fact, when I watched a play on Queen Idehe and Queen Idia, that is what is giving me the courage to write this play. And what Olobo said, because in Olobo said, if I have Okun, Ovorame's daughter is like the dominant character. You know, she's the only one free who can move around. And I chose the dream sequence style to be able to write this play, because anything goes in dreams. In fact, I remember becoming the president, giving a speech in a dream, and I woke up with a big smile that day. And then the day I woke up becoming a taxi driver in another dream, I cursed even the bed that I slept on. So you find in dreams things become possible in a sequence, and gives the playwright the freedom. And that's why I've chosen this one, because I knew I was going to tamper with culture. I was going to make a woman very dominant from the beginning of the play, where she goes to her husband in prison and tells him, I would like you to eat. And she's powerful because she's the daughter of the favorite daughter of the king. And she's powerful because she's the wife of a war general. And so she could move from place to place. But even then, I found myself limited. I always tell people, especially my daughter, who is a very big feminist, that I cannot go beyond what the story determines and the culture determines, because I want to make you happy. I must say things, and I cannot write the impossible, where I will say, because I'm talking of feminist something, the woman gets up and says, men, you are bad, from today we take over. We'll kill her, with all due respect. So I don't think I want to be a feminist. I like what the feminist scholars have called me, that I am sympathetic to the cause of women, but not a feminist. I think I think there's going to be a fusion. I think the major problem with all due respect to most films that I've seen, I think most of those writers start as stage writers. Bamidele, what's his name? Maswen, and all those people. If you watch their movies, Kunle Afolayan, who you would find that what they do with the script is almost like first think out a stage script and then minimize the dialogue. If I remember, someone asked me to write a film script, and I said no, I spent too much money learning how to write a stage script, and I'm just perfecting the art, so I don't want to dabble, because I want to express. I don't want my characters to come and say, where is it? Up there. No, but I want to explain why it's up there. And I think the film, I need to think in terms of the camera to be able to get, but I think like a playwright, so I'm very physically involved. I want to control my story. And so, but the future is there'll be, and I think in England it was fun, because I would see great actors like Roger Moore and all those ones. They would finish the film as James Bond and still come on stage and act. I think that the actors, if they are trained actors, it will be easy for them to oscillate. But what we have now are actors who are basically trained on the camera, and so the voice is not modulated, because the camera and the big speaker helps them to perform without, and the energy that is needed becomes a problem when you take them from the film set to the stage. But I think there'll be a point where we will, in America, in Russia, all over the world, in France, where film has taken a great, you'll find that there is still a very slim line. People cross over. I think that it must have been film and theater that started that word crossover, where you can modulate and do both at the same time. And I think the playwright, it's still going to keep his plays. His plays will be adapted for films, and most of them are being adapted. Some look at what they did to Soyinka's Tunde Kelani did to Soyinka's Lion and the Jewel. You understand? And did to Yekba, Shola Animbo, Osofisan's script. He told me he wanted to do the wives, so I can't wait to see what he turns the wives into. And he said he will just do it the way the script says, and I would like to see that experiment. And so it's fun for me to. In fact, I watched most of Akin Shola's Tunde Kelani collaboration before going to read the Yoruba scripts, and to see the difference and how much was taken away. I think the film is more flexible because it allows them to enrich the story more. So it's better for the you to, as a playwright, just write the play and let the film people do the magic to the script. If you don't recognize it anymore, just walk away quietly. I think I'm going to take a leave. When you've written 60, 70 plays, you want to take a rest. I love what the plays are doing. People are beginning to talk about them, write about them. I just sent Mujagbe to South Africa, where somebody is working on Mujagbe. And people, in fact, someone told me, and I like all the categories, even though I don't like to be categorized. Someone says you are a social realist, idealist, and all those. It's nice to know that people are beginning to discuss you, And I think I should stop. You and Professor Adekoya put me on a hold last year, in fact early this year. But by the time you put me on a hold, what I now did quietly was to be writing the stories without telling you. So by the time you told me I've unbanned you, I told you I have 6 plays for you to read. But I think for me it's become a compulsion. It's become. I'm hooked on it. Yes, I feel useless when I wake up because I've so worked my system that at 2 a.m. my eyes must open. And my wife says, no, get back to bed. I say, I can't. And so I grab my laptop and crawl to either the chair in the bedroom or go to the study and work. Or like I did today while waiting for you, come here and continue writing. My mind does not feel normal if I am not thinking of a story. I think it's gotten to that point. I now know how drunkards feel when they don't taste a glass of wine or palm wine or the drug addict. Yes, I think it's become an addiction to me. It's because I always still feel, even after 70 plays, that when I die, the plays that I have not written will be more than those that I have written. Well, I try to relax by watching films. I watch a lot of films. I'm on Netflix. I'm on different, and my Yoruba supplier of films in Ede has my number. He sends me. He says, "Baba, new one don't come out. Ijaogun, he gives me all the latest, and then I go. In fact, we are so perfect. He knows the kind of films I want to see. I just sit in the car and press pim, and he brings all, and he even picks them. And so I watch a lot of movies. I learn from there, and then I found that I can also see some movies through YouTube, which also keeps me informed. And so I constantly am in that process of enriching myself through that way. Then I read other people's plays. I read what this has done, and lately I found myself going back to Zulu Shofola to read The Wedlock of the Gods. Old wines are tasty. I don't know why. The Wizard of Law, and maybe because I missed her, but I also liked the sincerity of her writing. She did not shroud or cover with grammar. She was so simple. She was a storyteller, and I kept asking myself, I think now that I'm becoming a grandfather, that's what is affecting me, which is, look, how many can your children pick that? You understand? So that is the process for me right now, trying to relax. And then I like stay with my family, my wife especially, who unfortunately has to be in Abuja while I'm stuck in Eden. But I like to drive also. I like driving, but again, one has to be careful. So those are the ways I relax and talk with children.